It began with the little things. Of course it did. Abusers don't announce themselves with thunder and lightning, but with the quiet erosion of a shoreline you only notice is gone when your house starts to slip into the sea. My shoreline was my memory. And Julian, with his perfect smile and the way he looked at me like I was the only person in a crowded room, was the tide. Our life from the outside was an oil painting. A cozy apartment downtown filled with mismatched furniture we'd lovingly haggled for at flea markets. Weekends were for farmers markets and long drives with the windows down singing off-key to classic rock. He was a successful architect, I was a freelance graphic designer. We were that couple, the one our friends pointed to and said, "See, it's possible." I remember the first time I felt the ground shift beneath me. It was a Tuesday. We were planning a trip to the coast for my birthday, a little bed and breakfast I'd found and fallen in love with online. I'd sent him the link a week prior. That morning I brought it up over coffee. "Did you get a chance to look at the Salty Pelican?" I asked, stirring milk into my mug. "The reviews say the view from the sea-facing rooms is unbelievable." Julian looked up from his tablet, his brow furrowed in that way that was usually endearing. A look of genuine confusion. "The what?" I laughed. "The Salty Pelican. The B&B for my birthday trip? I emailed you the link last week." He shook his head, slowly placing his tablet on the table. He reached across and took my hand. His hands were always warm. "Honey, I don't think you did." "I'm sure I did." I insisted, a little less air in my voice. It was Wednesday morning. I sent it from my work email. The subject line was "birthday getaway" with a bunch of exclamation points. He gave my hand a gentle squeeze. His eyes were soft, filled with a sort of tender concern that made my stomach clench. "Lara, baby, I check my email constantly. I would have seen it. Are you sure you didn't just save it as a draft?" The certainty I'd felt just moments before began to fray at the edges. Did I? I could picture myself typing the email, hitting send. But his confidence was so absolute. It was like standing next to a mountain and trying to insist it was a molehill. I thought I sent it," I stammered. "Hey, it's okay," he said smoothly, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. "We all get forgetful. You've been juggling a lot of projects. Just send it to me now and I'll book it this afternoon." He smiled, that perfect smile. Problem solved. And just like that, the conversation was over. I was the one who was mistaken. I was the one who was forgetful. I went to my office and found the email sitting exactly where he said it would be, in my drafts folder. My finger hovered over the send button, a cold knot forming in my chest. I could have sworn I had sent it. But there it was. The proof. He was right. I told myself, I'm just stressed. But the tide kept coming in. A few weeks later, my car keys vanished. I was never one to lose things. My life was a series of organized systems, a place for everything and everything in its place. My keys had a designated hook by the door. One morning, they weren't there. "I can't find my keys." I called out, my voice sharp with rising panic as I rifled through the mail on the console table for the third time. Julian walked out of the bedroom, pulling a sweater over his head. "Where did you leave them, honey?" "On the hook. The same place I always leave them." My frustration was mounting. I was going to be late for a client meeting. "They're just gone." Okay, just calm down," he said, his voice a placating balm I suddenly found irritating. "Let's retrace your steps. You came in from the grocery store yesterday afternoon. We searched for 20 minutes. I checked my coat pockets, my purse, the kitchen counters, the bathroom. Nothing." I was on the verge of tears. "This is insane," I muttered, sinking onto the arm of the sofa. "They don't just walk away." "You've been a bit scattered lately," Julian said gently. He knelt in front of me, his expression one of pure sympathy. "It's okay. Take my car for your meeting. We'll find them tonight." I felt a surge of gratitude mixed with shame. He was so patient, so understanding. And I was a mess, scattered, forgetful. That evening he found them. "Well, look what we have here," he said, his voice holding a note of amused discovery. He was holding the keys up, dangling them from his finger. "Where were they?" I asked, rushing over. "In the freezer, tucked behind the ice cream." He chuckled softly. "You must have put them in there when you were putting the groceries away yesterday." The freezer. I stared at him, my mind a complete blank. There was not a single shred of a memory of me opening the freezer with my keys in my hand. It felt like a scene from a movie about someone else's life. "No," I said automatically. No, I wouldn't have done that. He sighed a soft, weary sound. Elara, they were in the freezer. They couldn't have gotten there on their own. It's not a big deal, baby, it's just a little quirky. He pulled me into a hug. My adorable, quirky, forgetful girl. He smelled like sandalwood and safety. I leaned into him, letting his certainty become my own. It was easier than trying to make sense of the gaping holes in my own mind. It was easier to believe I was becoming quirky and forgetful than to entertain the alternative. What was the alternative? That he had put them there? Why would he do that? To make me late? To make me feel crazy? No, that didn't make sense. That was a dark, twisted thought. Jillian loved me. This was my stress, my fatigue, my mind playing tricks on me. My fault. The isolation came next, disguised as devotion. My best friend Chloe had been my rock since college. We had a standing wine night every Thursday. After a few months with Julian, he started planning special date nights for us on Thursdays. But it's my night with Chloe, I'd say. I know, baby, and I love how much you love your friends. He'd reply, stroking my hair. But I just miss you so much during the week. I want to spoil you. Can't Chloe understand that? Tell you what, I'll even call the restaurant and apologize to her myself for stealing you away. How could I argue with that? He was being romantic, attentive. I'd call Chloe full of apologies. Again? She'd say the line tight with an unspoken question. Okay, Lara, we'll reschedule. But we rarely did. If it wasn't a surprise dinner, it was a movie he'd already bought tickets for, or a sudden, pressing need to visit his parents on a weekend I was supposed to see my family. He framed it all as love, as a deep, all-consuming need to be with me, and I, desperate to be the focus of that kind of adoration, let it happen. I let the space between me and my support system widen until it was a chasm too wide to shout across. He began making comments about my work. I had just landed a major rebranding project for a local coffee chain, a project I was immensely proud of. I was showing him some of my initial logo concepts. They're nice, he said, tilting his head. Nice? Just nice? I felt a familiar prickle of defensiveness. Well, they're very safe, he clarified. For you, I just think you're capable of so much more. Your early work was so much edgier, so much more provocative. It feels like you're losing that spark. His words hit a nerve I didn't even know was exposed. Losing that spark. Was I? I looked at my designs suddenly, seeing them through his eyes. Safe, uninspired, commercial. You're just saying that because you're an architect who works with steel and glass. I tried to joke, but my voice was thin. I'm saying that because I believe in you, he said earnestly, taking my hands. And I worry you're selling yourself short. That this freelance stuff with its constant client demands and compromises is dulling your shine. Dulling my shine. The phrase echoed in my head for days. Every time I sat down to work, I felt a paralyzing self-doubt. Was this good enough? Was I good enough? Julian suggested I take a break from freelancing for a while to rediscover my artistic soul. He said he could easily support us both. He said it was because he loved me and wanted me to be happy. And so I did. I let my biggest client go. I told myself it was for my art. But really, it was another shoreline crumbling into the sea. He didn't just want my time. He wanted my confidence, my independence. The final thread I was clinging to was my own perception of our relationship. I truly believed that underneath all my newfound flaws, my forgetfulness, my anxiety, my dulled shine, that we were happy. That our love was the one solid thing in my increasingly shaky world. That was the last thing to go. And it went in the most glitch and most devastating way possible. It was a text message. A simple notification that flashed on his phone screen while he was in the shower. We were getting ready for a dinner party at his boss's house. His phone was on the bed, face up. I wasn't snooping. I would never snoop. The thought had honestly never even occurred to me. I was just walking by to grab my earrings from the dresser when the screen lit up. It was a name I didn't recognize. Ariana. The message was just 3 words. Last night was, followed by a fire emoji. My blood ran cold. It was so sudden, so jarring, it felt like a physical blow. My heart started hammering against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. Last night Julian was working late. He'd come home exhausted, complaining about a project deadline from hell. He'd barely touched his dinner before falling into bed. He'd seemed so stressed, so worn. out. I'd felt a pang of sympathy for him. Last night was. My mind raced trying to find an explanation. A different Julian. A work thing. A joke. Anything but the obvious. The shower turned off. In a panic, I snatched the phone. My fingers were trembling so badly I could barely unlock it. His passcode was my birthday. Of course it was. My heart ached at the irony. I swiped down the notifications, but the message preview was gone. He must have it set to be private on the lock screen. I clicked on his messages. There, Ariana. I tapped the name, my breath held tight in my chest. The message thread opened, and my carefully constructed world, already fissured and fragile, shattered into a million pieces. It wasn't just last night. It was weeks, months. Texts filled with inside jokes I didn't understand, plans for lunches I never knew happened, and compliments about her that made my stomach turn. You looked incredible today. I can't stop thinking about our conversation. He's lucky to have you. Wait, that one was from her. She was talking about someone else? No, reading further down my blood froze. She was married. They were both cheating. And then I saw the text about me. Ariana, is everything okay at home? You seem tense. Julian, it's Ilara. She's been so fragile lately. Forgetting things, getting emotional over nothing. Honestly, I'm worried about her. It's a lot to handle. Ariana, you're a good man for sticking by her. Julian, I just want her to be happy. But it's draining. Being with you is like a breath of fresh air. I felt the air leave my own lungs. He was painting me as a fragile, unstable burden, a charity case. He was using the very anxieties he had cultivated in me as a justification for his affair. The lost keys, the missed emails, the dulling shine. It wasn't just random carelessness. It was a script, and he had been performing it for two audiences. I heard the bathroom door open. I dropped the phone back on the bed, face up, exactly as I'd found it. My body moved on autopilot, a ghost in my own skin. I walked back to the dresser, picked up my earrings. My hands were perfectly steady now. The frantic bird in my chest was still. It was a strange, terrifying calm. The fog was gone, but what replaced it was a landscape so bleak, so horrifyingly clear that I almost wished for the confusion to return. He walked out of the bathroom, a towel around his waist. He smiled at me, that perfect, loving, devastating smile. Hey you, he said softly, ready to go wow them? I looked at my reflection in the mirror. My eyes were wide, my face pale. For the first time in a long time, I didn't see a forgetful, scattered, fragile woman. I saw a stranger, and behind me in the reflection was the man who had created her. I smiled back, a brittle thing, almost. I said, my voice even. I'm just deciding what to wear. But what I was really deciding was what to do with the truth. A truth so sharp and heavy it felt like it could either slice me to ribbons or become the sword I used to cut myself free. The drive to the dinner party was surreal. Julian chattered beside me, pointing out a new restaurant, commenting on the traffic, placing a warm hand on my knee. Each touch felt like a brand, each word a lie layered upon another lie. I was an actress in the most important performance of my life, and my stage was the passenger seat of my own car next to a man who was a complete stranger. My role was simple. Play the part he had written for me, the fragile, slightly broken thing he needed to take care of. It was nauseatingly easy to do. All I had to do was be quiet. He would fill the silence himself. You seem quiet tonight, baby, he said, his voice laced with that familiar patronizing concern. Everything okay? I turned to him, letting my eyes look distant, unfocused. I gave a small shrug. Just tired, I murmured. A bit of a headache. It wasn't even a lie. My head was pounding with the force of my unspent rage. My poor girl, he cooed, squeezing my knee. Always pushing yourself too hard. Just stick by me tonight. We don't have to stay long. Oh, we'll stay. I thought, a cold fire burning in my gut. I want to watch you work. The party was at his boss's penthouse, a sterile expanse of white marble and glass overlooking the city. People milled about with glasses of champagne, their laughter echoing in the cavernous space. Julian immediately transformed, becoming the charming, brilliant architect. He navigated the room with an easy grace, shaking hands, laughing at jokes, introducing me with a proud arm around my waist. This is my better half, Ilara, he'd say, and I would smile, my practiced brittle smile. I became an observer, a ghost at the feast. I watched him, really watched him for the first time. I saw the way his smile never quite reached his eyes unless he was the center of attention. I saw the way he subtly steered every conversation back to his own accomplishments. I saw the flicker of annoyance in his expression when his boss praised a rival firm. The charming facade he presented to the world was paper thin, and I was horrified that I had never noticed it before. I had been too busy looking at the reflection he showed me of myself, the one he wanted me to see. Later I found myself cornered by his boss's wife, a woman named Cynthia with kind eyes and too much jewelry. "Julian tells me you're taking a break from your design work," she said, her voice soft, "to recharge the creative batteries. I think that's wonderful. It's so important to take care of yourself." My throat tightened. So he had been spinning the narrative here too, painting my retreat as a form of self-care while framing it to Ariana as a sign of my instability. Every version of the story served him. "Yes," I managed to say. "He's been incredibly supportive." "Oh, he's a good one," she nodded emphatically. "A keeper. The way he talks about you, it's clear he just adores you." I felt a hysterical laugh bubble up in my chest, and I had to physically swallow it down. Adoration. Was that what this was? This slow, meticulous dismantling of a person? The performance was exhausting. By the time we left, my face ached from smiling. As soon as the apartment door closed behind us, I dropped the act. I didn't have the energy for it anymore. "I'm going to bed," I said, my voice flat, already walking towards the bedroom. "Ilara?" His voice stopped me. I turned. His face was a mask of confusion and hurt. The actor was back on his own stage now. "What is it? What's wrong? You were a million miles away all night. Did I do something?" The question was so brazen, so audacious that I could only stare at him. "Did you do something?" The hypocrisy was breathtaking. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the phone at his head and watch him read the words that had condemned him. I looked at his hopeful, smiling face, the face of the monster who had been trying to erase me. I thought of the screenshots, the address, the plan I had made with Chloe. I thought of the woman I was fighting to become again. I summoned the most brilliant, awestruck smile I could manage. I threw my arms around his neck. "Italy?" I gasped, letting a tremor of excitement enter my voice. "Julian, oh my God. It's perfect." He hugged me back tightly, smug and victorious. "I told you I'd take care of you," he whispered. "Yes, you did," I thought to myself as I stared over his shoulder at the wall, my smile turning into a grim, determined line he couldn't see. "But now, I'm taking care of myself." The trip to Italy was never going to happen. My destination was Chloe's spare room, and my journey there would begin in 3 days. On Friday, the 2 days between my meeting with Chloe and Friday were the strangest of my life. I was living inside a secret, a countdown timer ticking silently in my chest. Julian was blissfully unaware, floating on the satisfaction of his grand Italian gesture. He treated me with a renewed cloying tenderness, as if my feigned excitement for the trip had proven my devotion and reset our dynamic to his liking. He had no idea he was doting on a ghost. I played my part. I let him talk about Rome. I smiled when he showed me pictures of the Colosseum online. "You'll get so much inspiration, baby," he'd say, and I'd nod, thinking about the evidence on my phone. I already have all the inspiration I need. On Thursday, while he was at work, I executed the first part of the plan. Walking into a new bank alone felt like a monumental act of rebellion. I opened a checking and a savings account under my name, only with a new address, Chloe's address. The bank teller was a young woman with a kind smile who didn't ask any questions. Then came the hardest part. I logged into the mobile app for our joint account, the account that held the sum of our shared lives, and I transferred exactly half of the savings. My finger hovered over the confirmation button for a long second, a wave of fear washing over me. This was real. This was the point of no return. I pressed the button. The transfer was instantaneous. The money was mine. It felt like drawing a border on a map, claiming my own territory. That afternoon, I packed a small box. Not clothes, not yet. My documents. My passport, birth certificate, car title. I added my laptop, its hard drive, a repository of the career he'd encouraged me to abandon. I took the framed photo of me and Chloe from my nightstand, the one he'd always subtly moved to the back. I sealed the box and slid it under the bed in the spare room, a room we never used. A room full of things we meant to get rid of. Friday arrived, a gray, overcast day that mirrored the grim determination in my heart. Julian was in high spirits, excited for his poker night. It was his one non-negotiable boys' night. A ritual. The irony that his cherished routine would be the stage for his downfall was not lost on me. "Don't wait up for me," he said as he was leaving, grabbing his jacket. "We'll probably go late. Try not to miss me too much." He grinned, leaning in to kiss me. I met his kiss, my lips cool. "Have fun," I said. "Win big." The moment the door clicked shut behind him, a profound silence descended on the apartment. It was no longer our apartment. It was a stage waiting for its final act. I didn't waste a moment. I pulled a large suitcase from the top of the closet and began to pack. It was a strange surgical process. I wasn't frantically grabbing things. I was curating my new life. I took the jeans that had always made me feel confident, the boots I'd bought on a solo trip before I met him. I packed my sketchbooks, the ones filled with the saved designs he'd criticized. I looked at them now and saw not safety but strength. I saw my own style, my own voice. I packed them all. I left behind the clothes he'd bought me, the dresses he'd said made me look ethereal or delicate. I left the jewelry he'd given me in its velvet boxes. I left the bottle of perfume he loved, the one that now smelled only of lies. I was shedding a skin, and I wanted to leave it here for him to find. An hour later I was done. One large suitcase, my backpack, and the box of documents. It was a surprisingly small pile of belongings to represent 5 years of a life. I texted Chloe. "Me. Packed. Plan is a go. Chloe. I'm ready. Text me when he's home. I'll be on the corner of Maple and 3rd. You're so brave, EL. Don't forget that." Her message was a shot of pure courage. I took a deep breath. Now all there was to do was wait. I didn't pace. I didn't watch TV. I sat on the sofa in the living room, the one piece of furniture that was mine before it was ours, and I waited for him in the quiet dark. The fragile, scattered woman was gone. The woman waiting for Julian now was a stranger to him. She was calm. She was clear. She was powerful. At midnight I heard his keys in the lock. The door swung open and he stepped inside, humming to himself. He was flushed from whiskey and victory, I could tell by the way he carried himself. He tossed his keys into the ceramic bowl on the console table, the bowl I'd made in a pottery class he'd discouraged me from continuing. He didn't see me at first. He flicked on the hall light and finally registered the scene. The suitcase by the door, the box, and me sitting on the sofa watching him. His smile faltered. The drunken good mood evaporated, replaced by a cautious confusion. "Ilara, what's going on? You're scaring me a little." I didn't move. My heart was beating a steady, strong rhythm. "Sit down, Julian." My voice was not my own. It was lower, calmer, devoid of the emotion he was used to. He remained standing, a frown deepening on his face. He started to deploy the usual script. "Baby, what is this? Are you okay? Did something happen?" His eyes darted around the room, looking for a clue, for a way to manage the situation. "I know," I said simply. The two words hung in the air between us. He blinked. "You know what? Honey, you're not making any sense. You look pale. Let's go to bed. We can talk in the morning." He took a step towards me, his hand outstretched in that placating gesture I now despised. "Don't," I said, and the word was as sharp as glass. He stopped. "Don't touch me. And don't call me baby or honey or your poor girl." A flicker of genuine anger crossed his face before he suppressed it. "Ilara, you're being hysterical." "No," I said, and I finally stood up. I felt strangely tall. "I'm being clear. For the first time in years I am being perfectly clear. I know about Ariana. I know about the Cypress Room and the townhouse on Wellington. I know you took pictures of her. I know you told her I was fragile and a burden, and that being with her was a breath of fresh air." Each statement was a stone I laid deliberately at his feet. His face went white. He looked, for the first time since I'd met him, completely and utterly stunned. He opened his mouth, then closed it. The master manipulator's script had just been set on fire. He recovered quickly, falling back on his most trusted tactic: denial. "What? Ariana? She's a colleague from work. Her marriage is falling apart. I've been trying to help her." "Ilara, where are you getting these insane ideas? Has Chloe been talking to you? She never liked me. She's poisoning you against me." I almost laughed. It was so predictable, so pathetic. The old me would have engaged. She would have screamed. I saw the texts. She would have presented her evidence begging him to admit the truth, needing his confession to validate her reality. But I didn't need his confession anymore. My reality was my own. It doesn't matter how I know, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. It only matters that I do. The really incredible part, though, wasn't the affair. It was the effort you put in. The dedication, making me think I was losing my mind. I took a step closer and he actually flinched. The keys in the freezer, Julian? I asked, tilting my head. Losing my emails? Telling me my work had lost its spark? Convincing me I was too scattered to handle my own life? That was a masterpiece of cruelty. You didn't just want to cheat on me. You needed to make me so small, so broken that I would never have the strength to leave. That's not true. He blurted out, his voice rising. I love you. I booked us a trip. To Italy, for God's sake. Does that sound like something a man who doesn't love you would do? That sounds like something a man who was afraid of getting caught would do, I countered smoothly. A grand gesture to distract from the fine print. But I'm reading the fine print now. I walked over to my suitcase and placed my hand on the handle. The woman you tried to create. The forgetful, anxious girl who needed you to tell her what was real. You did a very good job. She's gone. I looked him directly in the eye. All his masks were gone. I saw him for what he was. A weak, terrified man whose only power came from diminishing others. But here's what you didn't count on, I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper. You didn't realize that when you burn everything down, you create a clearing, a space for something new to grow. And what grew in the space where she used to be is me, and I see everything. Tears were welling in his eyes. They were tears of rage, of frustration, of a narcissist losing control. Don't do this, Lara, he pleaded, his voice cracking. Don't throw this all away. We can fix this. I can fix this. No, I said, and I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was a smile of pure, unadulterated power. You can't. I'm leaving. I picked up my box. I turned my back on him. I walked to the door. He was shouting my name behind me, his voice a mixture of pleading and fury. I didn't turn around. I didn't hesitate. I opened the door, stepped out into the hallway, and closed it quietly behind me, leaving the men, the apartment, and the ghost of the woman I used to be locked inside. I walked down the hall, pulled out my phone, and sent one last text to Chloe. Me. I'm out. And for the first time in 5 years, I felt the glorious, terrifying, beautiful sensation of being completely and utterly free. The air in the hallway was cold. I walked towards the elevator, my suitcase rolling quietly behind me, a steady rhythm against the frantic beating in my ears. With each step, I felt the last 5 years sloughing off me like a heavy coat. The weight of his expectations, his criticisms, his reality. It was all back there, locked in that apartment with him. When I stepped out onto the street, the night was cool and damp. The city lights seemed brighter, the air cleaner. A block down, just as she'd promised, Chloe's car was waiting. I opened the back door, slid my suitcase and box onto the seat, and then got into the passenger side. Chloe didn't say anything at first. She just looked at me, her face a mixture of awe and profound relief. I buckled my seatbelt, my hands trembling slightly now that the adrenaline was starting to fade. I looked at the building I had just walked out of for the last time. It was just a building. It held no power over me anymore. You did it, Chloe whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I did it, I repeated, and the words tasted like victory. She put the car in drive and pulled away from the curb. Just then my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. The screen glowed with his name. Julian. A call. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. A second later, a text notification appeared. Julian. Lara, pick up the phone. We need to talk about this. Another buzz. Julian. You can't just leave. I love you. Don't do this to us. And another. Julian. You're not thinking clearly. You're making a huge mistake. The same old script. The same manipulation. He still thought he had the power to define my reality. I looked at his name on my screen. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, not even a flicker of doubt. Just emptiness. A blank space where something terrible used to be. Calmly, I opened his contact. I scrolled down. My thumb hovered over the option. Block this caller. I pressed it. A confirmation popped up. Are you sure you want to block this contact? I pressed block. Then I went to every social media app. Block, block, block. With each tap of the screen, another door was sealed shut. Another lock was turned. It took less than a minute to digitally erase him from my life. When I was done, I turned my phone off completely and dropped it into my purse. Chloe glanced over at me, a proud smile on her face. "Welcome back, Yael," she said. The first morning was the strangest. I woke up in Chloe's spare room to the soft gray light of dawn filtering through the blinds. For a moment I was disoriented. Then a wave of pure unadulterated peace washed over me. There was no weight in the air. No need to perform. No one to manage. The silence wasn't empty, it was mine. I got up and made coffee just for myself. I didn't have to listen for his footsteps or brace myself for a mood I would have to navigate. I sat by the window sipping from my mug and watched the world wake up. It felt like I was waking up with it. The first few weeks were a blur of administrative tasks that felt like sacred rituals. Signing the lease on a small one-bedroom apartment on the other side of the city. A place with big windows and a small balcony perfect for plants. Forwarding my mail. Changing my address on every account. Each form I filled out, each signature I scrawled was a declaration of independence. I painted the walls of my new living room a deep, vibrant teal he would have called tacky. I loved it. I bought a lumpy, ridiculously comfortable sofa from a thrift store. I hung my own art on the walls. Slowly, a space that was entirely a reflection of me began to take shape. It wasn't a curated magazine spread like our old apartment. It was real. It was mine. 1 month after I left, I reactivated my professional website. I emailed my old clients. I was terrified they would have forgotten me or replaced me. Instead, I was met with enthusiasm. My biggest client, the coffee chain, emailed me back within the hour. They had put their rebranding on hold, unhappy with the other designers they'd interviewed. They asked if I was still interested in the project. I opened the files on my laptop, the ones Julian had called safe and uninspired. I looked at the clean lines, the clever use of negative space, the elegant typography. He had been wrong. It wasn't safe, it was confident. It wasn't uninspired, it was sophisticated. He had criticized it because my confidence was a threat to his control. I emailed them back. Absolutely. I've had some time to reflect and have a few new ideas I'm excited to share. I walked into that presentation a week later and gave the pitch of my life. I was no longer the hesitant artist seeking approval. I was the expert. I was the professional. I knew my work was good and I presented it with the passion and clarity he had tried so hard to extinguish. They offered me the contract on the spot. The project was bigger than before. So was my fee. 1 year later, I'm sitting in a cafe, the same one I'm now rebranding for their city-wide expansion. The late afternoon sun streams through the window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. My sketchbook is open on the table in front of me, filled with frantic, joyful scribbles for a new logo concept. My phone buzzes beside me, a text from Chloe with a funny meme. I smile. My life is full. It's not a dramatic, cinematic life. It's a quiet, peaceful, productive one. I have my work, which I love. I have my friends and family with whom I have carefully and lovingly rebuilt my connections. I have my little apartment with its teal walls and its balcony overflowing with slightly wilted but trying their best tomato plants. It is a life built on a foundation of my own making. Sometimes there are echoes. A car that looks like his. A whiff of sandalwood on a stranger. A couple arguing on the street in low, tense voices. In the beginning, those echoes would make my heart seize up, a phantom limb aching with a memory of pain. Now they are just ghosts. I can look at them, acknowledge them, and let them pass right through me. They have no substance. They have no power. He tried to contact me once more about 6 months ago through an email address he created just for the occasion. It was a long, rambling message about how he'd been in therapy, how he'd realized his mistakes, how he'd never loved anyone but me. He asked for a second chance. A year ago, that email would have been a landmine. But I read it, and all I felt was a distant, clinical pity for him. He hadn't changed. He had just found a new script to read from. The language of therapy was just another costume for his manipulation. I deleted the email without a reply. His version of the story no longer mattered. I learned the most important lesson of my life in the wreckage of that relationship. He made me doubt my sanity, that much is true. But the clarity I found wasn't just about seeing his lies. It was about seeing myself for the first time in years. The gaslighting worked because I had a tiny, insecure part of me that was willing to believe I wasn't good enough, smart enough, or strong enough. The process of cutting him out of my life forced me to confront that part of myself and prove her wrong. My clarity became my power. It's the power to trust my own perceptions, the power to define my own reality, the power to build a life so full of my own light that there are no dark corners left for someone like him to hide in. I take a sip of my coffee. The sketch in front of me is starting to take shape. It's bold and it's good. I pick up my pen, my hand steady, and I get back to work. My work, my life, mine.